Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. This is a show that I live for, and I can't wait to dive in with you guys because I'm behind, and that never happens with this show. I think being disconnected from cable, somehow allowed it to fly under the radar, which is kind of weird. But I am so here for what Ryan Murphy is doing this season, and the fact that he's split it into two smaller stories, I think might be more beneficial. As much as I love Ryan Murphy and I love this show, we have seen him struggle with endings sometimes. He's got a little bit of a Stephen King run in him. And Stephen King is like that. That's not a knock. He's my favorite writer of all time, but also somebody who kind of struggles with endings. So maybe having shorter stories maybe plays to the benefit of Ryan Murphy. I said earlier that the Roanoke season, that first half, was stellar across the board. So I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen here because we're going to get two stories this season. What am I talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler-free and then a little spoilery into episode 1 of American Horror Story Double Feature. And as I said, we've got two smaller stories, and based on the trailers and specifically the very first teaser, it looks like we are dealing with these two things for our stories. We've got a vampire and we've got an alien. And together, they're going to give us one full season and give us kind of individualized stories. We start our season on the bottom half of the screen with these bloodsuckers. And I like very much that Ryan Murphy wastes no time hinting at the things that are coming in this season. I mean, the fact that we're so upfront with the vampire, motif, I like that he hints at that right away in your opening sequence. And the other thing that I love about this episode and the start of part 1, titled Red Tide, is that we're in the Cape. I think it's a wonderful setting. You go to the Cape in the winter. The whole concept is that Finn Whitrock's character is a screenplay writer. He's working on a pilot. He's had some writer's block. His agent, played by Leslie Grossman, sends him up to the Cape for 3 months. And his wife, Lily Rabe, who's pregnant, is an interior, Instagram designer. And she's gotten, a legit gig working on the house that they're staying in. They also have a daughter who's, a little violin, ninja, Alma, played by Ryan Kira Armstrong, who so far has also been spectacular and also very weird, but in the best ways possible for this type of show. But you have these three. They come to the Cape in the middle of the winter to kind of take on these types of things. And it's a wonderful setting for this story because the Cape at wintertime really allows you to go to a more muted palette color-wise. And when you're looking at the screen, you get a lot of this kind of blue hues, more kind of desaturated looks and feels. And not only does that work from a cinematography standpoint and what they're shooting and delivering, but from a story standpoint. I mean, going down the route of this kind of vampire thing that they have going on, I like the fact that that's where we are for a setting, and the fact that the town is basically dead. Being a Jersey kid, it's kind of like when you go down the shore during the winter. It is very, very quiet down the shore, whereas the summer is where everybody comes in. So I love that for a setting. And I love the general setup. Like I said, you've got these three. You're going to be able to play with, Whitrock in kind of like a shining Jack Torrance way. We don't get there in the first episode. We start to see a little bit of that in episode 2, which we'll talk about later. But I like some of the things that you're setting up for the three in this house, and I like that all of the horror and the suspense of what's going to be this first part is kind of on the periphery the entire episode. And it allows him to introduce us to all of our main players. Like I said, you've got Whitrock, Rabe, and Kira Armstrong. You also have Sarah Paulson in here. You have Francis Conroy. Evan Peters is back. And you also get like I said, Leslie Grossman as well in here. And and McCauley Culkin, of course, who's also in there. So we kind of get to establish where everybody is, get introduced to all of them. And I think my favorite introduction of any of the characters and it's no shock, it had to be Evan Peters and Francis Conroy, who kind of seem to be our seasoned veterans into the realm that we're diving into up here in the Cape. They are both writers. They come to the Cape during this 3-month stretch to write and knock out gold, and they kind of stumble into Finn Whitrock at a bar. But the way that we meet them, mild spoiler, they sing in karaoke, and it is freaking phenomenal, to the point that when Ryan Murphy cut away to go deal with something else, I was like, man, I wanted to see the whole, like, let him play the whole song. Give him 4 or 5 songs. It was so freaking entertaining. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And, you know, for a first episode, I think that Murphy does a really good job of laying our foundation, giving us the perfect setting to now move forward. And, you know, having seen episode 2 already, because, you know, the premiere was a 2-hour, 2-episode premiere, you can see how everything that he set up in this first episode is really a nice springboard to kind of get us moving a lot faster and into a little bit of a crazy town come episode 2. But of the 2 episodes, I like this one better. I thought it was a little bit tighter. I thought it was paced a little bit better. And I liked the peripheral of everything. Like, it just felt like around this house there is uneasy, unsettling things. And, you know, he's able to provide some legit jump scares toward the end of the episode and dial in all the things that Horror Story is really good at. And for a first episode in a shortened story, I really thought it was one of the most efficient premieres that we've gotten out of, you know, Murphy for a first episode. Second episode did not hit as well as the first one for me, although there's plenty of good stuff in there. But this one I thought definitely hit more for me. And, like, if this had been the only episode, like, whoo, my excitement level would have been through the roof. And, it's, you know, it's still pretty high up there. But I thought episode 2 was a bit more of a comeback down to earth episode as it ramps up to get crazy. And at least where it leads us off, I'm so fascinated for episode 3. So let's bring the old C-Maniacs up. Why don't we? Yeah, there they are, man. Let's get a score for episode 1 before we get to my reactions and then my inevitable spoiler review. Because if you've never followed me on American Horror Story coverage, spoiler free at the top, reactions, and then spoiler content. So for me, like I said, really, really solid first episode. One of the stronger out the gate episodes, I thought, from Murphy and for American Horror Story. Really sets the tone for this season and just allows Finn Whitrock, more than anybody, but also Evan Peters and Francis Conroy, to just have an absolute ball. Those 3 are crushing it. So for me, and plus the cinematography is really great, the creepy horror setting, and the horror elements that we get, I really dig, and the score. The score is so good. Between the actual score and the music selection choices, just really dug this episode. So for the C-Man, I gotta go 3.8 out of 5 C-Maniacs. This does not have me going, ooh, this is going to be like my favorite season of Horror Story of all time. But it has me feeling really, really confident that we hopefully will get a really rock-solid season. And part 1 gets off to a good start in episode 1. And to build off of that, well, why don't you check out all of my reactions to episode 1 of American Horror Story Double Feature Part 1, Red Tide. Take it away past American Horror Story, watch the C-Man. Oh, jeez. Dead rodents.
What? They're all over the road.
Oh, Jesus. What's with all the red lights, man? Is this like that 1BR movie? Is that gonna turn red?
Get the fuck out of here, fucker! Out of this town! They're gonna munch on your balls! Alright,
Oh, that's Paulson?
Enough crazy for one day.
Oh, I so didn't recognize her in the trailer.
Get out!
Oh, man, she's crazy.
We call her Tuberculosis Karen. I think she actually has TB. Just smokes fruit. Oh my!
Maybe something cool and ancient like dysentery or plague.
Oh, dear ticks. There's Lyme disease all over this area. Surprising you around every corner, whether it's a crazy man.
Oh, what? This is daytime. How's he out?
It's good to
Why
get a
is he
break.
moving that way?
He's saving us! He's saving us!
What's happening?
Yo, what was that dude's deal?
85% of the crime on the Cape
He
is
didn't have
opioid
vampire
related.
teeth.
No,
What did he eat?
Who could have made those wounds on those men?
My first guess is a great white.
I thought great whites migrate.
Great white just gutted two dudes. No bite marks. People in this town know what's up. McCauley.
No, thank you. I'm married to a woman.
These are all my regulars. Strike me as down for some frottage.
Frottage?
It's French for rubbing our dicks together.
Okay. Excuse me. I have a reservation for two. Gardener.
Call me.
Oh, what a great intro from Culkin. That was hysterical.
Baby, when I met you, there was peace unknown. You ever find tooth comb? I was soft inside. There was something going on.
Peters.
Making love with each other. Islands in the street. To another world.
This one is obsessed with Lyme disease. Oh shoot, how many of those are? 1, 2, 3, 4. Why are they freaking out like that, man? Ugh.
Carl and Alan have a
Very
lot in
creepy.
common.
Creepy
They're
visuals.
staying at the
The poor woman has consumption, Inspector Javert. Has paid.
I just want you to get out of this place.
There's someone in the house already? Oh, there he is! Ugh. How did he do that with his body? What? Oh! I think that had his face no more. Woo!
It's too quick.
There's our baby in that bag.
His friend.
Oh no.
You want to just stick it in without taking the time to lube me up? Fine. That's fine. If I was fucking with you, I would have told you to take them rectally. But I'm telling you, those pills are it. How do you think Bell writes?
Yeah, like, while, you know, I think the majority of the episode was enjoyable, they laid in some good, like, oh, shoot, man, like, I wasn't ready. Or like, even when you are ready, you still get you to jump out your chair. So now that you've seen my reactions, let's just break into this thing, man, top to bottom. And like I said, I love that Murphy starts hinting at vampire-esque things, like, right out the gate. You know, you have Whitrock and Rabe and Armstrong driving in the car, coming into the Cape, and, you know, Rabe and Whitrock are talking, and you hear, you know, Armstrong counting every once in a while. You hear her say 7, and, you know, they talk, she says 8, and then talk, you say 9, and then they finally show you what she's counting, and it's roadkill. And eventually Whitrock and Rabe are like, what are you counting? You know, like, is it like, you know, beach posts? Or I don't remember what exactly they say, but like they throw some option out. She's like, no, roadkill. Like, they're everywhere. And like, I've already counted 9. And then she just says 10. And like, Whitrock turns and slams on the brake, and there's a dead deer in the middle of the road. And like I said, you're teasing of the vampires right out the gate, man. Like, he gets up there and it's, you know, not been hit by a car. It has been attacked by something, and like his throat, neck is just like gnawed into, man. Like, it looks like someone tearing flesh away with their teeth, which immediately I'm like, oh man, we getting vampire. For a second I thought we were gonna get a vampire deer, which we didn't get. As the car pulls away, like, Lily Rabe her character is obsessed with Lyme disease, so she's like, don't touch it, you'll get, in case you get Lyme or anything like that. So Whitrock doesn't touch it, and as they get back into the car and pull away, the first little jump scare that I got was just, whew, I thought we were going to get dead like deer, like waking up, and instead the deer gets pulled away to probably be finished being eaten. But from there, we get to see that they are moving into Provincetown, and their house is huge. One of the positives of visiting beach towns in the winter. You get the pick of the litter for any of the houses that are available. And like I said, Rabe's character has kind of gotten a little bit of a following on Instagram with some of her interior designing. So she's now got a job to redesign this entire interior of the house. So you have them come in, and you kind of set all those things up, and then you get their daughter, played by Armstrong, named Alma, just out there practicing perfect violin, man. Her violin skills are freaking crazy good, and that allows it to play into the score, and I love a good string score. So this little girl crushing it with the violin right out the gate. And as they're kind of settling in, Whitrock decides I'm gonna run out, go run to the store, and I the creepy, eerie, that peripheral eeriness in this episode, right out the gate. I mean, if the roadkill wasn't eerie enough for you, as he's walking through town, you start to see the house lights that are on the outside lights by where your door would be. You start to see them all flip red. And I immediately was like, did we just transport into 1BR? Which was a great little horror suspense movie about a community. And that community is tied into a bigger overall cult. And the people who are in that cult flip their light switches to show red light bulbs at night, which is a huge freak out for the main character. Because she gets to the end of the movie and she's like, anywhere I go, these people are all connected to each other. So I don't think that's what's going on, although it certainly was reminiscent of that. But I think it locks in the fact that the people that are at the Cape still know what the deal is. And I have a feeling the red light bulbs must be some kind of signal in some kind of an agreement that's going on between the people that do live in what they call P-Town and the ones that are more like that character. There's some sort of deal, and then as we go through, some people in the town definitely have a sense of something going on in the town that is unnatural, we'll say. But as he kind of goes, they kind of leave you sitting on the parking lot lights, and I'm like, oh, is that gonna turn red? And it doesn't. And then you're just inside the store, and he's moving around, he's grabbing stuff, throwing it into his grocery cart, and as he comes out the end of the aisle, we get our first interaction with Tuberculosis Karen, who is played by Sarah Paulson. I did not recognize her until she opened her mouth. And she, she's putting in a performance that doesn't sound like Sarah Paulson, but Sarah Paulson always kind of sounds like Sarah Paulson. So the minute she opened her mouth, I was like, oh shoot, that's Paulson. Kudos to the makeup team, man. The makeup on Tuberculosis Karen is so good. It looks nothing like Paulson. I totally missed her in all the trailers. And I had a couple of you point out, Paulson was in the trailer, as was Billy Lord, who I just missed in general. But Paulson looks nothing like Paulson, man. She comes out and slams into that cart in a way that made me almost jump through the roof, man. I was not ready for a jump scare at that moment in time. But she comes in and she's just running all sorts of crazy stuff, man. She starts yelling at Whitrock and is basically telling him to beware of the bloodsuckers in town, and the way she's talking, she sounds crazy, and you're and obviously as we go through the episodes, you start to see, oh yeah, no, she's clearly onto something. But as an outsider coming into P-Town, seems like a nut job. And even the grocery store guy, as he's bringing up Whitrock, is yeah, she's a bit of a character, man. We call her Tuberculosis Karen. We don't actually think that she has TB, but she doesn't really take care of herself whatsoever. And just looks a hot mess. But right out the gate, you're kind of yeah, beware of her. She's a little bit nutty. And almost every time she interacts with Whitrock, it involves a lot of screaming and a lot of cussing. Holy cow, man. The mouth on Tuberculosis Karen is filled with lots of F-bombs. Is that I don't? So I'm watching it on Hulu the day after, so I get all the cursing. It's all in there. And I know that it's cable television, but there are a ton of F-bombs. So let me know, are the F-bombs coming through on FX? Like, is that a thing now on cable? Like, we can just drop F-bombs all willy-nilly after, 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night? Like, I was not ready for the amount of cursing that came out of Tuberculosis Karen's mouth. And considering it was that much, I'm wondering, like, are they bleeped out on the TV, or is that like they're live as well? Please let me know that down below in the comments. But anyway, as we leave, that and Whitrock comes back. The girls go out to run. Do they go to run errands? I guess they just go for a walk on the town, and they end up near the cemetery. And Rabe is talking with Armstrong, and all of a sudden, you like as you're kind of going through the cemetery, you get our first instance of one of these bloodsuckers, and he's in all black, completely white, bald, doesn't have vampire teeth, just kind of has like gross, jaggedy, like poor person teeth. I hate to sound like I don't mean to put anything on. I don't mean to disrespect anybody who has low income. But like they just look like unkept, untreated teeth more than like sharp. And I was like, that's interesting. Like maybe these guys aren't vampires or traditional vampires, but nevertheless, the way that these things move, like it's like they're breaking their body and their bones, and there's just creaking, and like they're real jerky when they walk and stuff, and the one that we see starts doing all that stuff, and I was like, no way, man. And Lily Ray, rightly so, is like, yeah, let's get out of here. And they spin and they start walking, and you think like maybe they're gonna be okay, because this thing doesn't it looks like it's breaking itself into like being in regular form, and all of a sudden it starts moving, and it starts moving quick, and Ray and Alma start booking it, man, and like this thing is like coming after him. Like I was sitting so tense, man. I was like, oh my gosh, are they gonna get home? Are they gonna have to run into another house? And sure enough, they do get home. They slam the door shut, and this thing just starts banging into the door. And like Whitrock is confused. He's like, what is going on? I want to say that no, I don't think he walks past any this time. He does walk past some in the second episode, and we'll talk about that when we get to that one. But here, he's just trying to calm everybody down. And they're like, this thing like freaked us out, chased us all the way home. They call the police, and that's where we get to see, for the first time, Adina Porter, who's another wonderful AHS alum that I love. She plays Chief Burleson. And as they're talking to her, you kind of get this vibe that, like, she knows some weird stuff goes on in town and just is kind of turning a blind eye to it. Like, tells them not to be worried. There hasn't been any violent crimes inside of P-Town in a long time. It seems like a one-off. Like, this guy was just messing with some newbies, that are coming into town just for the winter, and was just trying to scare you guys. Like, I tell you, man, like, I'm with Ray, man. Like, if you saw what's going on, like, nah, that guy was not trying to just scare us, man. Like, that guy was out for blood. And like, we'll see what that's all about in a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of odd. The police totally not about helping this family out at all, and it's just like, just be weary of them, and like, stay in the house more often than not. But I think they're just trying to scare you. And what the other thing that's odd too is like during this whole sequence, it's in the middle of the day. Now you do have a pretty good cloud cover, but like when you're looking at, specifically when they're at the cemetery and the trees and stuff, like the shadows, like it's a distinct difference, like what's shadowed and what's in light, even if you've got clouds. So for a minute I'm like, oh man, Ryan Murphy, are you about to do like sparkly vampires? Is that your thing? Like what's going on? And I don't think we will actually know until we get to episode 2, and it's one of the things I kind of like that they were put together, because between the 2 episodes it really does set everything up for you, where these next 3 or 4 or whatever it is that we get, like you can really just get running right into the rest of the story. But it was one of those first things where I was like, these ain't no normal vampires, man. Like if they're out during the daytime, something weird is going on. And we come back to the house, and Whitrock has just got like hardcore writer's block. We get a bunch of these shots where you see Rabe and Armstrong doing stuff in the house, and Whitrock is just sitting there, and you just got that blinking line on a Word doc, and he just hasn't written anything. And as that's kind of going on, He's like trying to write. Armstrong is playing the violin. I think he at one point like kind of stops her and is just like, hey, like I'm like so far behind. I got so much to do. I love your violin playing, but right now it's kind of a distraction. And she kind of seems a little put off, and you quickly understand that the relationship between these two is very, very tight knit. And him saying anything like that is kind of off. And she kind of takes a little bit of offense to it, and in fair suit, but so much so that like Whitrock even understands it, and later on like apologizes sincerely. He's like, I love your violin playing, and like you're the best. You're so much more talented than I am. But I love that as you're going through this writer's block stuff, you're getting to see how close he is to his daughter, and that relationship and how tight that relationship is very important to what goes on in the story in episode 2. But nevertheless, after nothing is really working and you kind of have that little scuffle or whatever, Whitrock just goes to clear his mind again. He goes for a run. He's running out on the beach, and you can tell that he can see something in the distance. And he's slowing down. He's like, what is, he comes up to it, and it's 2 bodies. And these bodies are straight up gutted, man. Like, split open, insides torn out. Like, nothing that, say, a shark would do. And, like, as soon as you see him, you're like, that's more of these freaking vampire-type things, like, just going after, like, eating more random people and, like, creatures or whatever. And you get, the chief back there, and, because Whitrock reports it, and the autopsy doctor, who's, like, this older, like, he's got to be in, like, his 80s or 90s. Like, this dude's old, man. He's there, and they're like, so what do you think did this? He's like, oh, first look, I'd say a great white shark. And I'm like... Before you even got to the autopsy guy, you're sitting there going, no way, a shark did that, man. Like, it's definitely these vampire creatures. And Homeboy's like, that's a great, not just any shark, right? Like, a great white shark. Like we're living in Jaws, man. Like, there ain't no great whites out in the Cape. Like, just complete and utter BS. And again, just reaffirms the fact that the people in the town are aware of whatever it is that's going on in the town. So I personally just got a little bit of a kick out of that. And back home, Whitrock, goes to Rabe, like, let's go out tonight. Like, the person who kind of was the caretaker of the house that brought them in when they first got there, he's able to get her to babysit, Alma. And he's like, let's go out, man. We'll get dressed up. We'll go down, like, the one bar that we can go to is, like, literally right down the street. We can walk to it. We'll have a nice little fun night. And Rabe is all about it because these first couple of days, like, have been a crazy whirlwind. And, as they're getting ready to go out, Rabe gets sick. And she's like, it's a little late into the pregnancy. I mean, she looks like she is like 6-7 months at this point. So she's like, it's a little late in the pregnancy for morning sickness. I think it's just the stress and everything that's been going on. So he's like, all right, well, hey, let's wait a little bit and we'll go. And she's like, no, I actually, she wants to push it. And Whitrock is like, we need to get you into bed. Like, you are definitely not doing well. And he's totally planning on staying home. And she's like, no, you go out. Like, you need it. Go get yourself rejuvenated. Have a drink. Meet some of the locals, come home and tell me all about it. So Whitrock is reluctant, but he's like, okay, fine, I'll go. So he goes out, and that's where we go to the bar. And this is where we get to meet the rest of the main core of the cast. And we start with McCauley Culkin, who apparently is playing what seems to be either a homosexual prostitute or possibly a bisexual prostitute. He is bought or paid for by Conroy's character later on, but it's to suck him of blood. So I don't know if like he got into that with her because he was willing to do sex stuff. The general vibe I got from Culkin was that he was down to just basically screw anything with 2 legs, maybe 4 legs. We can get there. I don't know. His character though is dialed up to like an 11, and he is hysterical. He starts out by hitting on Whitrock, and Whitrock's like, I'm married to a woman, and like, McCauley is just like, as are most of my regulars, like, big deal, man. And like, you can tell that Whitrock doesn't want anything to do with it, so he's just kind of playing with him, being, just like kind of toying with him and definitely being friendly and joking about it. And as he's leaving the bar, he says something, and I think Whitrock says something. He's like, if you're ever interested in a little frottage, you give me a call. And Whitrock's like, frottage. He's like, yeah, man, that's where we take repeaters and we rub them together. I was so excited when Culkin got cast. That was, I think, the last piece of news around this season that I heard. And to have that intro, I was like, dude, he came to play. He looks fantastic. He looks like he's having a ton of fun. I know he's been doing a podcast for years. But this would be a great way for him to come back into film and stuff. And, like, it's one of those things where over the course of the years, like, McCauley's gone through some struggles or whatnot personally. And I think that's one of the reasons he kind of backed out of the spotlight and went into the world of podcasting. And you can tell, man, like, he's definitely got, I think, his life together. He, seems to be in a good spot with himself and seems like he is having an absolute ball with this character in this part of the show. Like, it kills me a little bit on the inside that we won't get him in part 2, same with Evan Peters. But what he's giving you right here, stand out. Like, he was a standout surprise in this episode. So I absolutely loved all of that stuff. And then, Whitrock moves over to a table and he's just drinking. And all of a sudden, you start hearing someone singing. And it's very obviously Evan Peters. Him and Francis Conroy are up on stage. They do a little duet action. That was so good, I got mad when they cut away to go back, I think, to rave for like a hot second. And then they come back. But I was like, so freaking entertaining. And Whitrock is just kind of sitting there watching them. And after their song, Whitrock's getting ready to leave or whatever. And the guy comes and brings him a new whiskey. He's like, I didn't buy this. And the guy's like, those two did. And they're like, come over, And they are aware of who he is. And like he kind of like establishes like, yeah, I'm out here for writing. He's like, us too. And as soon as they say their names, he's like, holy. He doesn't really react to Peter so much, but when Francis Conroy says Bella Noire, he kind of freaks out, and that engages him even more so. And they tell him how great the cape is. They come out here for 3 months. The last 2 like award-winning screenplays that Noir wrote, or maybe books that Noir wrote that were turned into screenplays, like won all sorts of awards. Same with Peters. Like, this is where they come for inspiration. And he's like, I could really use some of that energy you guys have, with the writer's block. And they're like, it won't take long, man. Like, this place will get you where you got to get going. And you just kind of have this nice little back and forth. And after he leaves, we see, like I said, Conroy goes upstairs, and that's where Culkin is. And she, like, cuts into his arm. Well, he tries to get out of it. Like, when he finds out that she's here for, blood sucking, he's like, last time you did that, man, like, you almost went way too far. Like, could we do anything else? And she's like, I'll pay you double. And he's like, nah, I'm good. She's like, I will pay you $400. And he's like, I don't really know. And she's like, I will suck you dry or you get nothing. He's like, okay. And, you see her go in. And this is right away, like I said, you're not fully committing to the vampires. You're not seeing, like, teeth come down. But you're not trying to hide it from the audience at all. Like, this is clearly what's going to be going on in our story. Like I said, episode 2 puts a lot of things in a much clearer state. But nevertheless, you see that Whitrock gets home, and as he comes in, you see, like, one of the... There's something off with, I think, one of the windows. Like, something's kind of rattling, and he kind of goes, and as he walks in, like, as soon as they showed it, I was like, oh, man, tell me this freaking thing that chased the girls home got into the house. And as he walks into the room to go get it, you see, like, the shadow move over, and you're like, but he's in there. And, like, even though he's there and he's coming, I still almost jumped out of my seat when he jumps on Whitrock. And you get this tense little vampire type thing. But again, the teeth aren't right, but he's coming at him. He's right here. He grabs, other cool thing about this house, like, the little girl's bedroom has a fireplace. There are multiple fireplaces in this thing. So he grabs a poker, and that's what's kind of keeping him off. And eventually he flips the thing over, and he just hits it. I think he's like up near the fireplace, and he hits him in the head with it, knocks him off, and then just goes to town and like just laying into this thing till literally it has no face left. So they obviously keep Alma upstairs in her room. They call the police. They come in. They do the thing, and like the chief, I think the chief is there. She says, like, this is self-defense, like somebody came into your home. Like, you have the right to defend yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. Maybe went a little far, but hey, we'll get this cleaned up or whatever, and we can just go about business. And that night, I guess, after he goes back upstairs, he goes to Ray. He's like, I think we should leave. I think we should go back to New York. there's a ton of places up here. We could get a different place that's not in Provincetown, and like we'll just go home. We'll kind of assess everything, and then we'll go to like a new place." And she's like, "That's great, but you didn't think about the fact that like this house meant something to me because like I had work here." And immediately, and that's the thing that I love too, is like Whitrock gives off the impression that he is like a really good husband, a really good father, and when you start to see those things change later on in episode 2, this episode becomes so much more important for really laying out who he really is and how he's acting differently later on. And he immediately is like apologetic. He's like, "I didn't even think of that. Like, shoot." And he's like, "I'm sure we can get you, something else at a different place." And she basically just like, "No, it's fine. I want to leave too. Like, this has all gotten creepy. You just killed a man downstairs. Like, there's no way we can stay in this house." So the next morning, they're getting up, they get up, they're packing, they're putting everything away, and Peters calls Whitrock, and he's like, "Dude, I need you to come, man." He's like, I got something for you, like, I want to talk to you. And Whitrock's like, "Oh, like, I would love to, but we're actually getting out of here. Like, things got kind of crazy, and, like, this just isn't a fit, and we're gonna, go home." And, like, Peters is so locked into, like, no, don't, he's like, "Honest to God, I have the solution for your writer's block. Just come to my house." So Whitrock immediately like stops whatever he's doing. You don't see him, but you figure he must tell Rabe and the daughter like, "Hey, I gotta run out real quick. This guy that I met at the bar who's a fellow writer." So he goes and he gets there, and he brings Whitrock in, and they kind of he's talking like the way the flamboyancy to way Peters just speaks throughout the entire episode speaks to the fact that he is a writer. So he's going on and on, about like the different things and how there's this muse, like the town really can get you going. But he's like, there is this one thing that we kind of do that helps us, and he takes out this little packet of black pills. And he's like, "You take one of these, and I promise you, you are going to be winning awards. You're going to be making so much money. Like, your writer's block will be gone." And Whitrock is like, "I'm not about drugs, man. Like, I got a family. Like, I'm not about any of this. Like, I appreciate your help, but we're just going to go home and call it a day." And, Peters seems a little dejected, but as he comes up, he's like, "That's fine, but you just think about that." And he slips the pills into Whitrock's pocket. And Whitrock goes back to the house. He's getting ready, to wrap up the last of the stuff that's in the house, and that's when we get our first interaction with Leslie Grossman. She calls him and is like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm leaving. Like, the crazy stuff's been going on. We're going back to New York. We'll find a different place, and we'll go." She's like, "No, you can't leave. Like, we sent you up there to write this pilot. If you don't write this pilot, you don't have a freaking career anymore." And she gets off the phone, and you can just tell Whitrock is like, "Shoot, like, I crap." And he goes into his pocket and he feels the bag and he pulls it out and he's just like, "Screw it. My whole career is on the line." Dude swears that this thing's gonna work. He pops the pill. And that's where your episode ends. But the last thing that you see as he pops that pill is Alma come around the corner and she sees him do it. And you're like, oh, now she knows Daddy's dirty little secret. And we don't know how this is gonna play out. But, supposedly this is the key to unlocking the writer's block. And episode ends. And like I said, the fact that we got 2 episodes, it really did function as a really good baseline for the entire series, or at least this part of the season. Because you establish all your characters, you lay great groundwork and foundation to build on for everybody, all of the players that are there. And that second episode just amplifies what the story is about to turn into. And I can't wait to talk about episode 2, because even though I liked 1 a little bit more, episode 2 is starting to push us to crazy town and gives us, some answers to some of the stuff that we see going on. So there you go, man. Those are all of my spoiler thoughts, as well as my non-spoiler and my reactions to American Horror Story Double Feature Episode 1. Really, really strong start. I can't wait after I'm done with these to sit down and watch Episode 3. Looks like that's probably going to hit sometime probably over the weekend, simply because I've got to leave in like 45 minutes or so to go check out Shang-Chi, which I'm so pumped for. So there's a very good chance that you get the Shang-Chi review before you get this one. But if you get it after, that's why I didn't get to episode 3 yet. But for episode 1, really digging where we're at. As always, I'm excited to see where Murphy takes this thing, and I'm fascinated by these characters. And granted, some of those feelings are because I also watched episode 2 because they came out together. But on its own, I thought episode 1 was a real rock-solid start. The question is, what'd you think, man? My American Horror Story family. How you feeling this season? Are you excited? Are you pumped about Evan Peters coming back? Are you pumped about who's in the cast this season? Did McCauley Culkin pop for you? What things performance-wise in that first episode stood out for you? What things story-wise stood out for you? And what things maybe concern you about the season? Is there anything that you're weary about? Anything that might have you going, it's okay, but we know Murphy can do better. Anything you're thinking, man, good, bad, indifferent about American Horror Story. Double feature, part 1, Red Dawn, episode 1. Whew! I tell you, I love American Horror Story, but Ryan Murphy, you do not think about what reviewers have to say with this season. But for episode 1 of part 1, Red Dawn, or Red Tide, I keep saying Red Dawn, which is a movie. Red Tide, that's everything you got, man. I want it down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man every Wednesday/Thursday for me, where we're talking about American Horror Story. It's kind of crazy to think that, part 1 is close to wrapping up already, and we'll be diving into part 2. But if you want to be here for all that stuff, you haven't yet, you want to show a little love, support, you like my enthusiasm for American Horror Story, you just like what I'm doing around movies, TV, trailer reactions, you want to show a little love, support, well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nation, especially you American Horror Story fans. This is a great place to talk AHS. We have a great time here. This is one of my favorite things to do every year, so I hope that you'll come join C-Maniac Nation. It's really easy to do. All you gotta do is jump over there, man. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace! Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.